Hey everybody, you're about to hear a bonus episode today featuring the new podcast from food writer author Candice Herriott-Townsend and me, yours truly, Max Trujillo. It's called Something Else About Food. I'm the producer and Candice is the host. So in the inaugural episode, Candice contacted iconic chef Sean Brock. You know, Candice is from Charleston herself, so she discussed with him his decision to move from Charleston to Tennessee. We talk about his new restaurant, his sobriety, the anticipation of him becoming a father, and his just general motivation in the kitchen. This conversation ignited a journey through the state of Tennessee that expands on a 6-part series. Through Sean's help, we speak with industry leaders such as Allan Benton of Benton's Country Ham, Roy Milner of Blackberry Farm's Brewery, the Barefoot Farmer, and a bunch of others. Today on the NCF&B podcast, we are releasing the first of a 6-part series. Click over to our show notes and follow the link so that you can download Something Else About Food as its own podcast. With new episodes coming out every week, subscribe to the link. And go tell your friends to subscribe. Just grab their phone when they're not looking. Just hit subscribe on their phone. And then that way, they too can hear something else about food. Thanks a lot, everyone. Enjoy.
I'm Candice Townsend, and thanks for tuning in to Something Else About Food. I'm so excited about this podcast because it's an extension of everything I've been working on the last couple of years. I began with a food blog and a social media account that gained a following that I never anticipated. That process led me to write and photograph a book about my local Charleston food community. I want to talk about what makes food communities strong, exciting, and vibrant. Sometimes that might be from my own backyard, or my city, or from across the country. A great plate of food is made possible by a passionate chef that is seeking and searching for the best possible proteins and produce available. It takes an entire community to make one amazing plate. I'm so excited for you now to join along with me as we go on our food adventure together. Thank you for subscribing, downloading, and telling a friend something else about food. For our inaugural series, I contacted James Beard award-winning chef Sean Brock. Sean has been living between South Carolina and Tennessee for several years and recently adopted Nashville as his home. It made me curious. What was it that had Sean so intrigued about this food region? That led us on an amazing food adventure where we explore and interview throughout Tennessee some of the great makers, producers, and growers that are all working to make Nashville great. I'm excited and pleased to share with you conversations that we have in a multi-episode series with Allan Benton of Benton's Bacon and Country Hams, Bear Creek Farm, Jeff Poppin, also known as the Barefoot Farmer, Chef Chris Stallard. Then we head to Blackberry Farm where we speak with brewery founder Roy Milner and master gardener and seed preservationist John Kuykendall. Lastly, we finish with the Owens family from Giving Thanks Farm. Let the food adventure begin.
The restaurant that I'm building will be the restaurant that I cook in for the rest of my life. It's the restaurant that I will serve my last plate of food in.
Well, we're here today with Sean Brock in Nashville, Tennessee, and we have the ultimate treat of being in his amazing brand new guitar room that they have just finished doing. So, Sean, thank you for being on with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It's exciting.
One of the things that was actually really inspiring to me, because I knew of your food. I had had your food at several restaurants when you'd been in Charleston, and you have this amazing international reputation. But one of the things that hit home for me was that whenever you talk about food and you talk about, where you grew up in Virginia, you talk with this amazing, loving perspective, and it comes out in your tone every single time about your mother and your grandmother. And that really hit home for me because some of the closest people to me in my life are my grandparents. And so I want to begin by asking you, here you are, like this international chef that's won many awards and people across the world know your name. What insights or saged pieces of wisdom, whether it was your parents or your grandparents, that they shared with you? And maybe you didn't realize it in your younger years, but at this point in your life, you're able to look back and realize those were really profound things that they shared with you?
That's a great question. I was really lucky, and I didn't realize it. My grandmother, who was just a huge inspiration for me, she lived the old-fashioned way. And looking back now, just her daily rituals and the way that she lived like the generation before her has inspired me to start a project to go around and do kind of like what you're doing and gather as much wisdom as possible from her generation. I remember how food brought together people in ways that I still haven't seen outside of that part of the world. You would go to these potlucks, sorghum cooking potlucks and corn harvesting potlucks, and just everybody pitched in and helped each other. And if one neighbor's green beans failed, then you gave them green beans. It was a way that communities really stuck together. I remember sitting on the porch, and we were always handling food. And I remember, like, my grandma, like, talking smack about the people down the street and their green beans. It's like, nobody's got beans like this, like, and that struck a chord with me early on to find that kind of worth and value through food. My responsibility now is to continue her work in her honor. For instance, not only do I have a lot of her seeds that I've been growing for years, but after her funeral, I went straight to the sink, opened the door, and grabbed her vat of vinegar that still had the mother swimming in it. And that now is the basis for all my vinegars, hundreds and hundreds of varieties of vinegars that will continue to make vinegars way past my career. And that started with her vinegar mother that was 30 or 40 years old at that time. You take such good care of it because you, like, imagine ruining that. I would, but that's the power of food.
And it's a beautiful thing that was something that extended past her lifetime, that you have and that you're utilizing, that'll extend past your lifetime if somebody cares for that and continues that tradition on. And I think that is an amazing thing. One of the things I think people, when they think of you, they hear about the seed preservation that you do, but I don't know if they fully realize what a food historian you are. What does it feel like to be in this role of being a food historian, that what you are sharing with your staff and what you're sharing with people, knowingly or unknowingly, that read your interviews or watch you in these TV segments that you do, what's that feeling like?
For me, it's, I don't know, I've just been so curious my whole life. And once, I think it was when I moved from the Appalachian Mountains to the Low Country, I started to see culturally how different the South was. And me being the curious kid that I was, I wanted to know why. And so that led to finding as many old cookbooks as possible, digging through those. That was when Hoppin' John Taylor had his cookbook store there in Charleston, which is dearly missed. But for me, I don't know. It's like each day I wake up, I have to grow, and I push myself to grow. And that growth over the past 20 years has been through due diligence and research, and it just becomes a passion. I don't know. It's hard to. I don't think I've ever truly tried to describe it before, but for me, it's like it's born out of respect, and it's born out of appreciation. And I think to truly be able to respect something you have to know all there is to know about it. And the food history of the South is just something that I'll be able to spend the rest of my life studying.
And it's something that you began passing on, this kind of new profound respect of Southern cuisine and understanding not just some of these traditional aspects, but really getting into where does that tradition originate from and helping people to understand that. And I think especially now, maybe more than in the last several years or decades, there's an appreciation for that. People want to know the story. They want to know, where did this dish originally come from? How did it get started? Where were these crops coming from? Yes, these are things that have been in the low country of maybe South Carolina for years and years and years, but oh, wait, they actually came from West Africa. And you connect all of those dots. And I think that people are craving and so excited to know more about that. And I think that's something that you have inspired, more so than I think anybody that I've come across in any of the readings or interviews.
What I've discovered recently is I think we just crave any kind of connection, like any kind of connection between two people or, strangers. It doesn't matter. Like we will find a way to connect. I mean, we're pack animals, and that's where we find comfort and security. And I think what's happening is what I discovered when I was a kid and in culinary school. The general public starting to see the connection that occurs when you start involving food and the people that make your food, the people that grow your food, that produce your food, and then the backstory to all of that. And ultimately, as you gather that information, you look at a plate of food in a completely different way, with a different perspective, one that causes you to eat a little slower and appreciate everything that went into it. And I'm pretty positive it makes it taste better.
I 100% agree. I actually shared with you over the phone a couple days ago that my very first fine dining experience in my entire life was when I moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and walked into a restaurant that you were cooking at. I think it was your first year of being the executive chef at McCrady's. And
what year?
Oh, gosh. Oh, Sean, I'm so bad with years.
2006, 2007, 2008?
Yeah, it was, I think, that first year that your name was being really presented as like Sean Brock, the executive chef. And
what were you doing in Charleston?
I had just moved here.
But just to go to school?
No, I got recruited here. I was a hairstylist for, I was a hairstylist for almost 20 years before I retired. Hey, I've got my scissors in the car. I always carry them. These guys thought I was joking earlier. And I actually said, I'm going into the purse right now. What's this? Oh, yep, there's the scissors. You need a haircut. You thought you were going to pull one on me. So I got recruited to Charleston. And here I am walking into this restaurant. And that whole dinner I can describe, because it was this conversation. It wasn't somebody just saying, oh, this is what we have tonight. It was them telling the story and saying where it came from. And every single thing had meaning. And that was a moment for me that will last forever. And ironically, this is a very full circle situation for me, because you get to be the very first person on this podcast and probably one of the most profound people I could ever talk to in the food world. So
crazy.
And I hope that in some way, this podcast and what we're kind of doing, what I'm trying to showcase, helps people to be more excited about that.
Well, what I hear as you're speaking about that experience at McCrady's, I hear like this idea of care and love that goes into getting food to the plate and to the guest. And I think that's the true secret. You just have to care. And if everything that you touch is produced by someone who cares on a very specific level that is emotionally attached to whatever that is they're producing, once that emotional connection occurs, your level of care just skyrockets. And I think that's how beautiful food is made.
Yesterday we were interviewing Leanne and Bill Cherry from Bear Creek Farm, who you had spoken very highly of, and I reached out to about being on this project with us. And one of the things that she said I thought was really interesting and resonated with me was she had commented on the fact, she's like, with these restaurants that we work with and these chefs we develop relationships with, we're not investors. We don't have an interest financially other than that one transaction that's happening at that time. She's like, but I feel so connected every single time we take something to somebody, and if it's not the best or the highest quality, then we're not taking it, because I have just as much of a role to play in that as the chef does, as the owner does, as the server does, and we all have our part to make that a final situation.
This is a perfect example, because when we met her and explored her career and her life and her work, we instantly felt that and saw that. And so it gets passed on to us. When the food lands in our hands, I would cry if I overcooked one of her steaks. It's not just a steak at that point. It's not just a cut of beef that I'm cooking for a stranger who's paying for it. It's like, this is now my responsibility this is like my contribution to our friendship and our connection as human beings. And it really does change the way I approach that product and the way I handle it. And what's really, really neat is the older I get, the more people I meet, the less I have to put on the plate. Because being a great chef is about collecting great relationships and finding like-minded people like Bear Creek Farm who put that intense care into what they're doing, because that's the hard way. You can do things the easy way and get by and have a pretty good life, but to do things at that level and to affect people the way that kind of food touches people and affects them, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of sacrifice, but that's what it takes. The reward is priceless.
I just have to sit here for a minute and kind of soak this in. I feel like this is like a song. It's like this really beautiful moment, and it's a little overwhelming, when you're kind of talking with somebody who has spent so many years and so much time just building this amazing thing. It's a profound experience.
I saw that as a young kid, though. I had to go out in the garden and work all day and then prep all night, canning and pickling and manicuring vegetables. And even as a kid, I had a different respect for food because I saw the work that went into it, because I had to do it. I didn't just see it. I felt it. And, the food, I don't know, I think our soul craves that and has to have that sort of deep connection to be happy and to truly feel joy. And think about it from a chef's perspective or a home cook's perspective or a producer's perspective. You get to do that every day. You get to provide something that can touch someone's soul. We're not talking about mind and body. We're going deeper. We're talking about someone's spirit and soul that you're touching. That is a privilege. That is a true gift to be able to do that. And I saw that at a very, very young age because I felt it. And the first time I was able to cook for someone and it was worth a crap and touch them, man, I'll never forget that feeling. It was like getting hit by lightning. It's like, whoa, this is what an amazing opportunity for a career. And this is the 90s. So Food Network had just gone on air, and Emeril was God to me. I studied everything he did, and I remember seeing and being so inspired by him Like he always talks about his family. He always talks about where he's from. He's so proud of where he lives. And I was like, you can do that for a living? Like, you can actually get paid to do that and maybe even be on TV sometimes and have all this fun.
How old were you when you had this moment?
I was probably 14 or 15.
So it's about the time that you went to work in a kitchen for the first time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I had to go work in a kitchen. I had to. And it's so crazy to look back. There wasn't a single day in my entire life that I ever thought about pursuing anything else. Not even. I mean, I'm from a small town, and everyone's prepping for college, and engineers and doctors and lawyers, and I'm like, I'm gonna
cook food.
I'm gonna make etouffee like this dude on TV. But I didn't, like, it's so weird. Like, I didn't care about anything else.
You knew that was your road.
Yeah, but I didn't even know it was a road. I just, I was so drawn to it, and it felt just so natural, and I felt so comfortable working with food, because that's how I'd grown up. And, man, how many years ago was that? I don't know. But, what's crazy is every day it's even more exciting, and it's even more interesting and more humbling. Like we're sitting across from a lot of my books, and I could just sit in here for weeks at a time and just read and never, ever come out of here, never need to see a phone or a TV. And that's what fills that hole that I wake up with in my soul every day, is that growth.
That search for learning.
Yeah, it's growth. I think I've been thinking a lot about growth personally, but also career-wise. I mean, growth is how I define my worth. It's not about money or magazines or TV or any of that. It's did I grow today? Did I do my best, and what did I learn today? Also, what did I screw up, and how can I learn from that? That's just been my curiosity since I was a little kid.
So I feel like the world kind of knows you from a food perspective, and we're hearing a little bit about this real thirst for learning and knowledge and growth. Who is Sean Brock today? Who are you besides the chef, and who are you besides the guy that has this amazing assortment of guitars behind me that I wish I knew something about, but I don't, and they're just beautiful to me to look at.
They're really awesome guitars.
Yeah, I know. I feel like it's a disservice that I can't talk to you about that, but who are you right now?
That's a really great question, and I'm the polar opposite of the person I was 2 years ago. I'm completely a different human being. I've truly undergone a full transformation from a mental health standpoint. And it is just the most amazing feeling to finally start taking care of myself. When you live the way I've lived, so dedicated, so thirsty, so curious, workaholic, like I forgot. I keep saying you. I forgot about taking care of myself. And when you start getting rewarded for it, you definitely forget about taking care of yourself, because the second you want to slow down, you're afraid everything else is going to pass you by. And for the last almost 2 years now, I have a completely different perspective on life, on happiness, on just being a human being. And that has made the biggest impact on my cooking that I could have ever imagined. And it's so cool because I would see people much older than myself cooking this food that I could not understand how it was such a natural way to cook so minimally with so much confidence and courage. And that you can't teach that. You can't read about that. You can't study that. I tried. It has to happen naturally. It has to, first you have to want it to happen. You have to seek that moment and have that goal of something that you know that will fulfill you. And little did I know, think about it for a second. Like, I had to hit rock bottom as a human being to figure out and get to the point in my cooking that I've always strived for and thought I had to kill myself to get to. I thought, I literally thought, if I work every day, if I study all morning and study all night, I'll get there. But that's not how it works. It's really not how it works. It works for a little while until it doesn't work. And it really is about what you do when you stand back up, when you dust off, and you take a look around, you're like, whoa, it really is that simple and that easy. It's amazing how complicated I'd made everything. And that was just, my personality at the time. I was a severe workaholic. I found worth in being the hardest working person in the room. That was my motto at all times. In fact, if you open my book, in the acknowledgments, I thank my parents for teaching me to work harder than the person beside me. That's just been my mentality. I watched my parents work that way. I watched my grandparents work that way. And that's what I thought gave value. And that's what I thought success was. But that's just dumb.
And now we're going to take a quick break to talk about a company that helped to make this production possible. I'm talking about Mise en Place PR. For anyone who's been involved in the culinary world, you've heard the term mise en place, which literally means to put things in their place. Their company's PR mission focuses on 3 strong factors. 1, transparency. They are not your traditional PR firm. They give you the tools needed to empower you to tell your own unique story. 2, shorter partnership times. I think the majority of us are looking for business relationships that focus on our specific needs. Mise en Place PR offers 3, 6, and 12-month relationship packages depending on you and your company's needs. 3, relationships, and this is the big one. They connect you to the media that you need to know, along with collaborators such as photographers, lawyers, and other people that you're trying to make connections with but aren't sure how to get in touch to. They help support you and your business to grow and accomplish your mission.
Run by business partners Kate Boyette and Becky Tannenbaum, Mise en Place PR specializes in food, beverage, and hospitality and are based in Charleston, South Carolina, serving the Southeast. They focus on openings, startups, rebrands, product launches, and events. For more information, please visit www.miseenplacepr.com or click the link in our show notes.
What are some of the things right now that are inspiring you, and not necessarily with food, but just life? What are some of the things that are really getting you fired up and just kind of igniting a passion in you that is unstoppable?
After having moved full-time to Nashville, Audie and I, we've gathered this just incredible group of friends, the most inspiring people I've ever been around. None of them in the restaurant industry, of course.
It's good to keep things mixed up a little bit.
Yeah, so really for the first time in my life, my friend circle is people who aren't in the restaurant industry. And I'm now seeing that I'm drawn to people who are curious about happiness and curious about compassion and empathy and trying to be the best human you can be instead of the best employee you can be or the best chef you can be or the most successful person you can be. It's about realizing that being the best person you can be is free. It doesn't cost anything. It's this beautiful mindset And it's just a way to, at the end of the day, just look at humility and realize what you could have done better, and apologize where you need to apologize, and wake up and try and do better that day. And when I find myself spending time with people who think that way as well, it just becomes the norm. Mm-hmm. And it just becomes the language. And we kind of have our own language. And we speak this crazy talk that 2 years ago, if I would have listened in, on the airplane or wherever, at a restaurant to my group of friends speaking, I would be like, those people are crazy. They need a hobby. They need a job. But, it's had the biggest impact on my cooking and on just my perspective on the food world. My new project will be a reflection, a mirror of who I am today. And I don't think there's a restaurant that exists right now that will be like the one I'm building. And it's crazy exciting. I don't have any desire to go work in a regular kitchen in a regular restaurant. I've had so many traumatic, unresolved trauma neuropathways from a life stuffed away in a kitchen that I literally don't like being in them anymore. It's almost like jail or something. You're tucked away in this room with no windows and lots of yelling and screaming and lots of really bad energy. Not like people are mean. It's really stressful when you have 100 people out there all wanting to eat at the same time, and they all have these crazy expectations, and you're freaked out because you don't want to mess up Leanne's steak. That's stressful. And I'm working on ways to create a kitchen that doesn't feel like a kitchen and a workspace that doesn't feel like a workspace. And I'm creating a workspace that I want to be at all the time and not feel like I'm at work.
So will you be cooking there?
The restaurant that I'm building will be the restaurant that I cook in for the rest of my life, and it's the restaurant that I will serve my last plate of food in. So yes.
I'm sorry, I just kind of got emotional. Really watching you say that and listening to it. I think that people search their whole lives trying to find that balance. For me, it was actually into the food world, and for you, you were saying you were so entrenched in the food world. Just hearing you say that's the last kitchen you want to work in, and mm-hmm. that's what you want to do for the rest of your life let's talk about that.
I see a lot of people struggling with that, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It has to happen naturally. It just has to happen, and you have to have that moment that you had sitting there. And the moment I had when a good old-fashioned intervention was in my living room. Yeah, those moments, that growth that occurs at that moment, you can't just wake up and say, I'm going to do that today. And that, to me, is proof that being present and living in the moment is everything, and realizing those things when they do occur, realizing the value and what a gift they are, and paying attention and being thankful.
And listening.
Yeah.
I could have kept pushing forward how I had. You could have kept pushing forward how you had, and probably neither of us would be sitting here excited and happy and talking about things that we are passionate about. I think one of the things that probably anybody listening to this is interested in is you've been living between Nashville and Charleston for quite some time, and you've recently kind of made the permanent move, right? Nashville is home. This is your base.
It is, yep.
And I think a lot of people are wondering, well, why did you leave Charleston? What happened? Why did you leave? And, when I reached out to you, I said, I don't want to ask that question. What I want to ask is, what is it about Nashville? And what is it about this place that has you so excited that this is home now?
That's a deep question. My heart is still in Charleston as well. My mother lives there. My brother lives there. That cuisine was a cuisine that I started studying when I was 17 years old. That's almost half my life. So I'm not done with Charleston yet.
I like it.
I'm not done with Charleston. I don't ever want to be done with Charleston. I'm just slowing down a little bit and trying to live in the moment and take better care of myself and not be spread so thin. And the crazy universe decided that it's also a perfect time to have my first kid. And everything's just, it's so amazing. Like the second I started slowing down and living in the moment and really focusing on being present, the sky opened up. It was just amazing. And every day's just been, it just gets better and better. Sobriety's been really good to me. And Nashville is just kind of where I feel drawn at this moment in my life because of the network and the community here. I just feel like I'm growing at this pace in this moment, in this place, and that's where I'm supposed to be. And hopefully some good cooking will come out of that too.
I'm pretty sure wherever you decide to live, there is going to be an amazing aroma in the air, and there's going to be some good plates of food going around a table. I don't think that's even a question. For somebody that's never been to Nashville before, and they're hearing about it maybe for the first time in a food perspective, what are some of the flavors of Nashville? What does Nashville look like and taste like and feel like?
So Nashville, I worked here from 2003 to 2006. I was the chef at the Hermitage Hotel, which is this beautiful grand hotel built in the early 20th century downtown. It's just an amazing place. If you're ever in Nashville, you have to go just walk through the lobby, go eat breakfast there, go have a meal, go into the Oak Bar. It's a really beautiful and magical place. And as I was cooking in that kitchen, I started forming these amazing relationships with farmers, in particular, Farmer Dave. I remember 90% of my menu was food that he would grow. And he would pull up out back with a truck, and I would always try to buy it all. And he was like, I can't sell you everything. The rest of the other restaurants already don't like you because you buy way too much of everything from everybody, and there's nothing left for anyone. I started really seeing and feeling that same sort of closeness with food that I'd experienced as a kid. And Farmer Dave still brings food to restaurants all over the place here, and he's still got that same amazing smile and incredibly delicious food. But Nashville now is a city that's growing at a rapid rate because, here's my theory. It's just my thought. It's just what I make up. Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, these larger cities are amazing, but it's just not sustainable to live there for long periods of time. Audie's a perfect example of that. She loves living in Nashville and saying that she lives in Tennessee. She grew up in San Francisco and New York. And so I think what's happening is all these people are starting to realize that they can live in a city that has a creative community that supports each other like no other place. And you can afford a house with a yard and a car, and the city's big enough to keep you busy and have places to go and things to do, but small enough to see 6 people you know at the post office, in the gas station, and wherever. And the sense of community here is, I'd never really seen anything like it before. And I think it's a lot of people moving from very busy places, and they're so happy to be in a place that's a little more relaxed, but still fills up the soul in a way that a lot of creative people need, to be around other creative people. And Nashville's always been that creative place. I mean, you know, the country music scene here, this was ground zero. And it still is, but it's a lot more than just country music here today. But as you drive around Nashville today, what you'll see is a place that supports really small businesses, really, really small businesses, like businesses with 2 employees and 1 employee. And that's what we all jump in. It's like, okay, you're making jeans, we're all going to wear those jeans. You're doing honey, we're all going to use. It's just this communal sense of pride that comes along with supporting people who have the courage to jump in and take a chance and do those things that are could be dangerous financially for them to take those risks. And Nashville's supporting that. And so what's happening is more and more people are getting more and more courage and confidence to open new creative small businesses. And, we're creating this town that's like, it's hard for me to leave. Like, I don't want to travel anywhere. I just like staying in Nashville.
Yeah, I think that there's so many people that they have an idea or a hope or a dream that they want to pursue, and they get scared, the financial risk of it and all of the other things. And it sounds like it's kind of like this spot right now that it's attracting those people, and there's things they can do for work, and that it gives them the opportunity to take a chance.
Be creative, be themselves, express themselves, do the things that, they've always dreamt about doing, and be supported and be celebrated. So cool. And, music for me is a big, big, big part of my life. And music literally comes out of the sidewalks here. And there's live music everywhere. And I'd forgotten how important that was for my soul, to stand in a room where the music just passes through you and fills you up.
You started playing when you were how old? You play guitar?
I started playing when I was probably 14.
Mm-hmm.
And now I play all day, every day, nonstop.
Well, I think this is like a great moment. Can you play us something?
Those are copyright issues. We got just kidding.
You can't just make up something on a whim. I thought that's how musicians did it.
I'll crank one of these amps up.
Well, I think we have to.
I sold my bourbon collection for these guitars.
It seems like a good trade-off. Can you point to the one I've heard in several of your interviews you've referenced, the guitar that your father made a trade for?
Yes, that's this one right here.
Can you tell us that story? I know you've said it many times before.
Yeah, so this is a late 70s Ibanez guitar that was an exact copy of a Gibson Les Paul, and they got sued, and it was a big thing because it was a really amazing guitar and it was affecting the sales of Les Pauls. Anyway, I didn't know that until a few years ago. That I remember so specifically. I can literally close my eyes and see this moment when my dad traded some shotguns for 2 guitars and 2 amps. And my brother got a guitar and an amp, and I got a guitar and an amp. And that's that guitar. And so I just had it completely restored, and it's the best playing guitar in this room. It sounds the best. It's unbelievable.
Well, I don't know anything about guitars, but I do have to say, when it's there, it's got the front and center first spot. So I think we know.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. See, this is why it's good to have outside perspectives sometimes. If Tennessee had a song, what would that song be?
Well, Tennessee does have a song.
We're going to pretend that they don't.
And it's really annoying.
We're going to give Tennessee a new song.
Yeah, it's really annoying. Tennessee right now for me is Jason Isbell. I just think his presence in this city, and when he does a 6-night run at the Ryman, he puts out a new album, he plays anywhere in town, it fits this moment and at this time and this place. And his music, I think, in my opinion, he's the greatest singer-songwriter of our generation.
I saw that he recently just had a concert, and you guys I might have stalked this on Instagram, went 2 nights in a row.
Yeah, I wanted to go more, but I'm really working on moderation.
But music can be extended a little farther, right?
Yeah.
So I also might know, because I searched down the rabbit hole a little bit, that you recorded some of your own music.
I don't know how that happened, but the community here, especially the recovery community, it's a lot of musicians. And you get to know people in those rooms on a very different level, and you connect on a different level. And I've met some amazing people who I had no idea who they were. I just knew what their first name was and their last initial. And it turns out they have their own studios and their own record labels, and they're incredible musicians. And it's just been amazing to be around creative people like that, and to have the opportunity to plug a guitar in and play on a stage in Nashville, Tennessee. Like 16-year-old Sean was the happiest kid on the face of the planet, like literally living a dream that I would have never imagined in a million years that I would have an actual record with my name on it or songs on iTunes. Wow, just crazy. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't made the life changes that I have recently.
My 16-year-old self is like ready to get on a plane and go travel the world and take pictures of food in every culture in every corner of the world that I can. Now I got to figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah, just keep writing emails like you wrote me, and it'll happen.
Which, thank you, by the way. For anybody out there that, there's something you're trying to pursue, or that you're after, or that you're wanting to make a reality. I think our internal voice a lot of times silences that and tells us, who do you think you are? What do you think this person's going to say? And I think that fear keeps us from being our best selves and exploring and pushing ourselves as far as we can. And when I wrote you that email, I thought, gosh, I've written him messages before. I never hear back. I know he's one of the busiest people in the food world that exists. And it was one of the happiest moments of my life when I got your email back. And you just very frankly were like, your email was compelling and genuine. And yes.
Yeah, I try not to look at emails or my phone or computers. I really just don't like them anymore. And I don't like how they ruled my life for so long, and it makes some people angry when they can't get in touch with me. But when I do skim emails, I can tell when people are authentic and honest, and that passion that you showed in that email, that's the passion that we've been talking about this whole time that makes special food. It's a genuine and honest and true perspective, and a level of care that is hard to come by.
And you can't be afraid. You are going to be told no 1,000 times, and sometimes it just takes that one yes, and every time you have to mean it and keep trying.
Yeah, fear has been something I've been thinking a lot about, and how it has kept me from a lot of opportunities over my entire life. And once I kind of stop being scared of fear. Number one, I relaxed a lot, but yeah, things just started raining amazing stuff.
And you kind of mentioned one of those things earlier. The universe has kind of decided this is the time you're on the horizon of parenthood. And what do you think about that? What has you excited about that?
Well, I think the universe is an amazing place, and I truly and honestly believe everything is as it should be right this very moment. And, it's kind of a glaring story, lesson to sit here and think that I'm going to finally have the opportunity to be a father, which I'd kind of given up on. I just turned 40. No, it did not just turn 40. I'm about to turn 41 in March because my son is due a day after my birthday. And think about that for a minute. That's just crazy. How's that possible? I mean, that is just nuts to think about. And I will say another crazy thing, speaking of the wacky universe. Audie and I have decided on a name, and we haven't told anyone. And we're not going to tell anyone. But when we were starting to look for names, I asked my mother to help. She wrote 4 names down. I didn't see it. She showed it to me the other day. It's it's on the list.
That was meant to be. That's the name.
It's not a common name. It's not a common name. I don't know anyone with the name. And what's going on here?
That's a meant to be moment.
Here?
Did you tell your mom that?
Yes, she lost her mind.
I bet she did.
She screamed in the middle of the dining room we were eating and like raised her hands up like she was praising the universe. It was a pretty amazing moment.
I'm a very big believer in serendipitous situations, and I think things are very connected in many ways. And I think when you allow yourself to hear what's being said around you,
all you got to do is pay attention.
Yeah.
It's slow down and pay attention. I was running too hard, and I was letting all that stuff pass by.
Parenthood is the most amazing adventure.
Everyone says that. All right, I'm waiting to see.
I want to ask 3 more questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem.
One of them is, what was the moment in your cooking when you realized, and it might be when you were 9 years old or 15 years old or 28 years old or yesterday, that there was this change for you? You kind of referenced it earlier, that you realized, I don't want to mess up Leanne's steak. When was that moment that you realized you had that connection and responsibility to these other people, other than just making a good looking plate that tasted good?
Well, what just popped into my head, I think it'll answer that question, but what just popped into my head was my first kitchen job. And I'd finally worked my way up to be able to cook the shrimp for the shrimp cocktail. And I destroyed and overcooked it. I got in so much trouble. It was so much shrimp. I mean, it wasn't like ruined. It just wasn't. It was way overcooked. It was rubbery. And I remember the trouble that I got into, and all of a sudden, I see this person running a restaurant. They're like, this just cost me so much money. Like, you just lost all this money and you wasted all of these shrimp. And like, that feeling it just stuck. And it got driven down in there very deep. And I didn't ever want to feel that again. And that crazy little moment when I was 15 or 16 sticks with me all the time. And it was really that first job where I saw the difference between the food that I grew up and the food in restaurants, the food that I grew up with and the food in restaurants, and how different they were in terms of quality and variety. And that made me become insanely curious about the food on my grandmother's table. I just thought everyone ate all those old heirloom varieties of everything that was insanely delicious and perfect and was prized. The first restaurant job I realized how, wow. And then when I came to Charleston and I was cooking in really nice professional kitchens here, the food that I would speak of from my childhood was a foreign language to everyone here, or there. Not here. People know what leather britches are here, and it's been really cool to take the Appalachian cuisine I grew up with and serve it in Nashville and have the older generation like see that moment where they're like, wow, I haven't tasted that in 25 years. Or, whoa, I totally forgot about this. My grandmother used to make this for me. That's so cool. Anyway, that's a tangent. But yes, when it was very early in my professional cooking career when that responsibility hit me. And yeah, the responsibility of what happens and the consequences of messing and something up and wasting food.
How old were you when your grandmother passed away?
I think I was cooking at McCrady's, honestly. I think it was like 2009.
So let's just pretend that we'll say 9 years old. And what would it have been like? Can you illustrate for us? You're outside, and I know your grandmother had this big garden, and you are walking into into her kitchen at 9 years old or 10 years old, somewhere in that time frame where you're old enough to really have some super vivid memories that have stuck with you. You walk into her kitchen, and it's July. When you walk in there, what's going on there?
Oh, I can see it crystal clear. So when you pull into the driveway, you first step onto a porch that's screened in, and that's kind of like the hangout area where all the prep work's done. So there's crocks and mason jars everywhere, and knives and food. And then you walk into the house where there's a wood-burning stove and another couch where other people hang out. Obviously in July it wouldn't be fired up, but all winter long vegetables would be drying over the wood-burning stove. When you walk in, and then you walk directly into the kitchen. Your first step into the house is directly into her kitchen, and in the middle of the kitchen is a dining room table, and there's a counter that wraps all the way around, and there's just food everywhere. Those big plastic Tupperware cake savers with stack cakes from apples from the year before. I can definitely see in something that used to confuse me to death as a child is in the window all these paper towels folded neatly with tomato guts rotting away to save the seeds. Almost always a plate of leftover cornbread and leftover biscuits somewhere on a table or on a counter. And on the stove, at that time of year, pressure cookers always just hissing away, and just food going in and out of those pressure cookers nonstop. And I remember being so scared as a kid because you're taught to be terrified of those things. But they were always on in my grandma's kitchen. And then there was always things slowly cooking and simmering away. She's just always standing there holding court, telling stories of the food of her grandmother, what it was like to grow, to live during the 40s and the 50s, and the stories that I would hear around my grandmother's table were just incredible. And I'll never forget, as I was cooking in Charleston, and I actually got the opportunity to explain to her about husk and the idea of opening it. And I got to show her this article that someone had written about husk opening. And I just remember her just being like, wow, that sounds really, really cool. And that was, for me, wow, what a moment to be able to sit there and tell my grandmother what she inspired. Kind of crazy.
A legacy. And she got to see it. She got to have a little slice of that she inspired an entire life work from. Thank you for sharing that. I just totally want to walk in and take one of the biscuits off the counter. I feel like I can visualize it. What does it smell like? What did it smell like? What were the aromas in the air?
So there were always a million different aromas because in the corner, there's a crock of corn souring over here, and that doesn't really smell great at this time of year because it's hot. And, there's always freshly cut cucumbers and onions and banana peppers sitting on the table, and you just smell that, and tomatoes, that just the smell of the garden. But like when you walk into a farm stand or a farmer's market and you just smell the garden, you smell those vegetables that still smell like the sunlight in the sunshine. That's what it smells like in there.
It's awesome.
Yeah, totally.
I have a feeling that in 10 years from now, those will be some very similar smells and sounds and sights that your son's going to remember.
I just hope if he goes into food, he'll be a farmer and not a chef.
Can we all go work on his farm?
Yeah.
One of the last things I want to ask is, for somebody that is inspired to pursue a life working in a kitchen, a chef, or some other role, what's your advice to them? You've had from the time you were young until now, you've experienced probably everything in between. And what do you want them to know?
I strongly believe, and my advice would be to take your time and do your best to determine the food that you're meant to cook. It doesn't have to be the food of your grandmother. There's a place inside of us that gets recharged and charged up and fed from a plate of food, and that could be a plate of Italian food for someone who grew up in Kentucky. It doesn't matter. It doesn't, for me, I think when there's that like electrical charge that occurs, you gotta stick with that. And you should recognize that, be thankful for it, pay attention to it, and then find a chef that you admire and that has dedicated themselves to that cuisine, and they treat their employees properly, and work for as long as you can for that chef. Just literally take every ounce of wisdom you can from that person. And I think that's kind of what I did. And that's my advice for a lot of people when they ask that question. As far as once you get a job, my advice is, it's crazy to even be thinking this way in my life now, but I think if you show care and manners for the people around you and care for the food, you'll go way further than some hotshot person who's cooked in a million fancy restaurants and has a million, degrees and accolades.
And I think that can probably translate over for almost any profession, any position that somebody has.
Just be nice.
The golden words, right?
Just be nice and learn from your mistakes and try better the next day.
Well, I don't think I can follow up with any other questions after that. That's kind of the inspiring last bite that I don't think anything else needs to be said.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out in Nashville.
Thank you, Sean Brock, for inviting us to come here. And now I do have to bother you. Can we just get like a couple little notes of something?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I really wish I knew something about guitars, but I can say this. I can appreciate what you're saying about them.
Well, all my guitars, almost all of them, are Frankensteins. I buy bits and pieces at a time, just as I find them, and then put them together. So, like, for instance, That guitar right there is a for real 1963 Stratocaster.
This guy.
Yeah, that's that's
wow.
the holy grail. That's a $20,000 guitar.
Jesus.
In mint condition. That one's not mint. Then the two beside it are also from the same era, but I pieced them all together for probably like $4,000 or $5,000 each. Yeah, Nashville Craigslist is silly. And then there's a Facebook page. It's called Nashville Gear Trader, and it's just all the session players and musicians selling their gear on Facebook.
I now know why you're really in Nashville. For the guitar, equipment. Yeah.
Oh my God, the guitar store's here. This is a guy that started in Charleston. These pedals, and so what makes those pedals cool is see all those old vintage pedals. Those were made with really old components, old transistors and capacitors, and they just sound unbelievable. And they don't make them anymore. You have to literally go digging through, I don't even know where. They're not even on eBay. These old capacitors, and this guy collects them and then makes these pedals. Like, so this has OC75 and OC43 transistors, and he hand makes them. Doesn't that sound amazing? Yeah.
That's a wrap on episode 1 of our new show. What a privilege to have the opportunity to hang out and talk with Sean Brock. He's an amazing chef and an inspiring man. I'm grateful for the time that he shared with us and opened up about who he is right now. I hope you'll continue following along with us in our remaining 5 episodes in this series where we explore who is making Nashville and the surrounding regions in Tennessee so incredible. Be sure to subscribe anywhere you find your podcasts, write a review, and tell a friend. To follow me and my personal food diary, go to Instagram at CHS Food Writer and the show at Something Else About Food. For photos and content about the show, go to somethingelseaboutfood.com. This show and series have been produced by Max Trujillo of the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast.